Fellow. Before we get started, please join me in a moment of silence for Lieutenant Colonel Scott Dietrich. Lieutenant Colonel Dietrich Jr. passed away November 13, 2021, surrounded by family after a lengthy illness. He survived by his wife, Kathy. Visitation is Saturday at Radderman's funeral home in Middletown, and he was a lifelong Rotarian. A moment of silence. And now to provide our invocation is Kevin Lynch, Senior Financial Advisor with ARGI Financial Group, Paul Harris Fellow ×3, and Chair of the Investment Committee.
Thank you. Bow our heads. Dear Lord, bless this food and thank you for our fellowship. Help us welcome the speaker, Terry Brooks, who's going to tell us about some very interesting situation. He's helping their organization, Bloom, Kentucky. He's helping out individuals who have what's called adverse childhood experiences. Well, many of us may not have experienced these things in our childhood, in our upbringing. We should have the empathy to understand how others sometimes experience them, and we need to be sympathetic to them. We often can't see the difficulties others face, the challenges they face, the pain they feel, but it doesn't make it any less real. Help us, Lord, as we go through our lives interacting with individuals, help us treat them with empathy and respect. Try not to judge them, and where needed, help them in any way we can. And also, dear Lord, help us appreciate right now the wonderful things we have every day in our lives that we often take for granted. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Kevin. And now to lead us in the pledge and four-way test is Claire Arnold, Program Manager at the U of L Speed School of Engineering and member of the District 6710 Global Grant Scholarship Committee.
Thank you, President G. If you'll join me in our pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you also join me in our four-way test.
Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you.
Thank you, Rotarians. You may be seated. At this time, we always like to welcome our visitors, and we have quite a few. So Rotarians, if you would make your way to the microphone, introduce yourselves first, and then your guests. And guests, if you could please stand so that we could recognize you. Denise.
President Jean, Denise Sears. I have two very special guests this afternoon. My first guest is Dr. Seth Wanye from Commonwealth, Ghana. I have witnessed this inspiring man restore sight to people in the most rural, impoverished regions of his country. I also would like to welcome Farini Mubratu. Farini was the CNN Hero of the Year 2019 for her work empowering young girls in Ethiopia. Her home is the Tigray region, which of course has been under severe humanitarian crisis. I am also pleased to announce that Farini, as of today, has joined SOS International as our very first humanitarian ambassador.
Ashley Brower with the Foundation for a Healthy Kentucky. My guest today is President and CEO of the Foundation for a Healthy Kentucky, Ben Chandler.
Good morning, President G. Claire Arnold with U of L. My guest today is Candy Medina. She's the Executive Director for the Gilbert Foundation and Chair of the Local Youth Philanthropy Council.
Good afternoon, Robert English. I'd like to welcome my esteemed colleague, Angelia Pointer, English Insurance Group.
President Jean and Rotarians. I'm delighted to welcome my guest who's on Zoom with us today, and that's Tanya Crum. She's the Senior Director of Education for KET.
Good afternoon, Rotarian and President Jean. I'd like to welcome my guest. This is Seth Pennington. He's the VP of Sales Marketing with Excel Services.
Good morning, President Jean. I'm Rick Harned, and I'm very proud to have two guests today. I would like to introduce Sharon Kitchen, the Education Director for Junior Achievement of Kentuckiana, with whom our club will be doing a very unique and interesting project starting in January. You will hear more about it. My other guest is Napoleon Akayezu, a caseworker with Kentucky Refugee Ministries here, who is very, very busy helping to resettle both the Afghan evacuees and the normal range of refugees coming into our fair city and building our community. Thank you.
Morning, President Dean. My name is Will Green with Vanguard Cleaning Systems. I'd like to welcome my guest today, Arthur Cox. He has been the Executive Director for over 17 years at St. George's Scholar Institute.
President Jean and others with us today. I'm Lori Flannery with New Directions. And my guest today that I'd like us to welcome is Beth Wells. She's with the Lewis Honors College at the University of Kentucky in Lexington.
President Jean, I'm Tracy Holliday, and my guest, last but not least, apparently, is Corey Miller, my successor at Cabbage Patch as Executive Director and a prospective member of this club.
Thank you to all of our guests. Please remember, if you would like more information about Rotary, our club to the left here is a What is Rotary table. There will be someone, and the guy back there standing and waiting with the coffee is Craig Sherman. He's going to be able to answer any questions that you have about Rotary. At this time, I would like to welcome Vice President Ken Grossman, Club Director, Paul Harris Fellow, and Mike Cole, past President, Club Director, Chair of the Rotary Foundation Committee, Paul Harris Fellow, and a host of other roles to the stage for special presentations.
Thank you, President Jean. We'd like to take a moment to recognize our Paul Harris Fellows, and would like to call to the stage Dee Tran, Jay Mallory, Jack Guthrie, Will Green, and Deline Taylor. And for those here today who have earned their Paul Harris Fellow pins, please stand and be recognized. In appreciation for the many ways in which you exemplified Rotary's motto of service above self. And on behalf of the women and men of our Rotary Club, it is my honor and pleasure to recognize you today as a Paul Harris Fellow. As a Paul Harris Fellow, you are promoting peace, fighting disease, providing clean water, saving mothers and children, supporting education, and growing local economies. You also are providing funds for matching district grants that support projects in our community and other communities in Louisville. On behalf of the trustees of the Rotary Foundation, it is my pleasure, and Jean's also, to present to you these emblems of a Paul Harris Fellow. Dee Tran, Jay Mallory, Jack Guthrie, Will Green, and Deline Taylor. Welcome to the club. Here is your certificate and pin. Thank you for all of your service. We urge you to wear your Paul Harris Fellow pin as a symbol of our appreciation for you and for your humanitarian efforts. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me once again in congratulating and recognizing our Paul Harris Fellows. Thank you.
I love it. Thank you all. Congratulations, Paul Harris Fellows. And I really love it when our executive director is not only a Rotarian, she's a Paul Harris Fellow. Yes, indeed. Please join me now In congratulating Rotarians honored last week at the Business First Most Admired CEOs event. Lori Flannery, New Directions Housing Corporation, Tori Mervyn McClure, Spalding University, spouse of our Rotarian Matt, Mike Norman, Kentucky Science Center, Dr. Alton Pollard III, Louisville Presbyterian Theological Seminary, and Brad Smith, MCM, CPAs, and Advisors, LLP. Congratulations to all of you for being honored. And now, it is time for what we've been waiting on. On behalf of the nominating committee, President-elect Walt Cano and I are delighted to introduce the candidates for the board of directors. We will begin with our two candidates for president. Drum roll, please. Rotarian Barbara Sefton Smith and Kevin Lynch. Yes, you guys need to come up to the stage. Come stand up here.
So it's my pleasure to introduce Kevin Lynch, and Kevin tells us why I want to serve Rotary. It's been rewarding to develop friendships with so many Rotarians who truly live the service above self motto in their personal and professional lives. My family emphasizes the importance of making a difference in the world in whatever you do and helping others who are less fortunate. Rotary gives us the opportunity to do just that with real impact on people's lives, both in Louisville and globally. In the meantime, we help each other become better people. The speakers also serve as a source of inspiration and insight. I'll be honored to serve Rotary Club and living its mission in this challenging time. Kevin's recent Rotary leadership and positions and activity, he was on the Rotary Board Club member 27 to 2019, the Investment Committee 27 to present, and as chair of that committee, International Service Committee from 2014, the Invocation Committee from 2017, Community Impact Committee, Justice and Policy Subcommittee, 2020 President, a Paul Harris Fellow +3, and he sponsored 2 members.
It's my pleasure to introduce Barbara Sefton Smith. Why she wants to serve Rotary. Rotary is a quintessential service organization on our planet, and I'm honored to be a member and to have the opportunity to serve more people in more places in more ways than I could have ever imagined on my own. My entire career path has been a calling, indicated in calculated in everything. I do, say, and believe Rotary always has and always will provide the platform for not just me, but for all of us to reach our full human potential and to do the very thing we were each placed here to do, to love the earth better than we, to leave the earth better than we found it. Her leadership positions include Rotary Club board member from 2017 to 2019, Speakers Committee, Member Committee, Paul Harris Fellow, Time Spy, and she has sponsored 2 members. Barbara Sefton Smith. All right, and now our slate for board of directors. Please, I am pleased to present Cynthia Miles Brown.
Why I want to serve Rotary. Why I want to serve Rotary. There's no better fulfillment than to serve a group of people whose sole mission is service above self. Serving Rotary is especially important since our service has lasting effects into the future. I want to make a difference in our community and the world and make good friends along the way. Cynthia's Rotary leadership positions Invocation Committee Chair, 2021, 2019, 20, Social Committee, Invocation Committee, Business Synergy Committee, and the Salvation Army Holiday Bell Ring, which you all can sign up, right, George? All right. Thank you, Cynthia.
Mary Dryden.
Why I want to serve Rotary. I want to serve Rotary because Rotary's mission is one which I could effectively advocate with potential members, community leaders, and the general public. Because in essence, I'll be advocating for my own passions in which Rotary represents. Rotary's product is rooted in serving others by providing outstanding service for both local and international communities, as Rotary is truly an organization that is impacting its community. Rotary gives me the opportunity to do something for someone else. And this organization truly embodies the phrase servant leader, as this is how I try to live my life. Serving on this board will also allow me to develop skills that I may not have the opportunity to develop at my current job and increase the representation of diverse board members. If selected to join this board, my guiding star in representing Rotary will be its core values and guiding principles. Gary's recent Rotary leadership positions, chair and vice chair of the Hospitality Committee. He's been a member of that committee as well, and the Social Activities Committee. Thank you, Gary.
Pauline Presentatio.
Why I want to serve Rotary. I'm a strong believer in service above self, and Rotary's commitment to the 6 focus areas of great impact makes a difference in health and well-being of our community, our country, and the world at large. I've also met wonderful people and made good friends over the last several years, a great bonus. Recent Rotary leadership positions, the International Service Committee member and past vice chair and co-chair of that committee. Thank you, Paul.
Dan Hartman.
And Dan had a business meeting come up, so he wasn't able to come today. But I do want to tell you about Dan. So why I want to serve Rotary. The Louisville Rotary has long played a leading role in making the city a better place for residents from all walks of life. As a lifelong Louisville resident who is passionate about this city, I would cherish the opportunity to play a more integral role in the Rotary's community commitment moving forward. Dan's recent Rotary leadership positions, Speakers Committee 2017 to current, Communications Committee 2016, and the Communications Committee Chair in 2005 to 2006. Thank you, Dan. I'm pleased to present Jay Mallard.
Yes, so I can get sound. Whoa. All right. Why Jay wants to serve Rotary. I want to serve Rotary because it gives me the ability to do for others and continue to learn about our community. Jay's leadership positions include Business Synergy 2016, Business Synergy Chair 2017, Membership Committee 2017, Membership Co-Chair 2009, and Membership 2019, Membership Chair 20 to 21. Thank you, welcome, Jay.
Our next candidate for the Board of Directors is Craig Mooney.
Why I want to serve Rotary? I've enjoyed becoming active and engaged in the Rotary Club since joining in 2018. Took a while to feel like I knew a significant number of members, but over time, I've become more comfortable. Thursdays have become my favorite day of the week because I typically leave our meetings inspired by the excellent speakers that present to our club. Rotary has encouraged me to get involved by volunteering in multiple club-sponsored service opportunities. I have found these experiences to be fulfilling. As I have gotten a little older, the opportunities to serve my community have become more important to me. I am a true believer in Rotary's motto, service above self. Leadership positions include vice chair of the Rotary Honor Scholarship Committee, co-leader for the mentoring programs at both Western and Iroquois High School, volunteer for the Rotary's Habitat for Humanity project, volunteer for serving dinner at the Reese Center on Jefferson Street, and is a Paul Harris Fellow.
Last but not least is our own Denise Sears.
Denise, why I want to serve Rotary. There has never been a greater need than I can recall in my lifetime to advance the Rotary mission of improving world understanding, goodwill, and peace through fellowship. My passion for serving those in need has driven my professional life, and I love that Rotary gives me the opportunity to live my passion outside of work. I believe that my professional experience advancing quality of life locally and globally will help me serve our club and the role it plays making our world a better place for all. Additionally, I bring over 30 years of business leadership and management skills to support our club's strategic growth and financial sustainability. Denise's leadership positions include the International Service Committee, 2018 current co-chair and chair, she's done it all. Community Impact Committee, 2019 current and 2021 chair of Justice and Policy Subcommittee. Welcome.
Let's give all of our candidates a hand. Rotary.
Who's got extra? Just pretend.
And what the beat is?
Future's so bright. The future's so bright, you gotta wear shades. And with that, on with the rest of the program. Thanks, everybody.
Rotarians, please hear the election guidelines. The Rotary Club of local election will be conducted online via Survey Monkey. The ballots and survey link will be emailed directly to each member immediately following today's meeting. Now, members can cast one vote for the president. Please cast 4 votes for the board of director positions. Voting is open until Wednesday, December 1st at 10 a.m. and we will announce the election results of the holiday meeting scheduled for that evening. And again, congratulations to all of our candidates. Now,
President Jean, I'm so sorry to interrupt. I wanted to let the room know if you did not get a meal ticket and you would still like to purchase one, there are a couple of extra. So raise your hand and I'll be happy to give you a ticket.
well, thank you, Executive Director. And now it is my honor to welcome Mary Ellen, President of the Dean's Foundation, Paul Harris Fellow ×6, and member of the Paul Harris Society, as well as the District 6710 Rotary Foundation Committee, to introduce our speaker.
Thank you, President Jean, and greetings to each and every one of you here today. Before I introduce our speaker, Dr. Terry Brooks, I want to take just a few minutes, I'll try to do this quickly, to set the context for what's been going on over the last 3 years that has actually resulted in Bloom, Kentucky. And so it all started with the Dean's Foundation trustees about 3 years ago this month, came to the conclusion that traditional grant making grants to relieve given needs and help others is pretty much a temporary solution. And we just didn't feel like we were moving the needle to the extent that the needle needed to be moved. And so our trustees decided it was time to get engaged in public policy advocacy, which was a really big change for our culture. And of course, they then commissioned, we knew we couldn't do that alone. So they commissioned Kathy Knox, our grants officer lead, to kind of test the waters to determine what level of interest there might be among other local grant makers to become engaged in policy advocacy. So I turned to my friend Ben Chandler at the Foundation for a Healthy Kentucky, knowing Ben and knowing his experience, his knowledge, his networking, knowing how to do policy advocacy. And so Ben was gracious and his staff to host a session to which I invited numerous local grant-making foundation leadership to come and listen to, what's it all about, how do you go about doing it, those kind of things. And we had a really good group that came, and we determined from that session that there was a significant enough level of interest among local grant makers that it was an effort worthy of our time. And so out of that group became a smaller group that worked the last 2.5 years in behalf of a larger group, listening and learning from local, state, national experts in various policy issues. And among that group of experts, we invited Terry Brooks and the team from Kentucky Youth Advocates to come. And they made a presentation about adverse childhood experiences. And suddenly, our group came to the almost instantaneous conclusion that that was such a compelling case, and that adverse childhood experiences was where our interest of education and health intersected perfectly. And so that became the cause for which we wanted to move forward. Now, it's a big deal to get a group of foundations and grant makers to get on the same page because, we've all been founded with different missions. We are all different shapes and sizes. We have different interests. We meet on different schedules. There's a lot of causes out there worthy of consideration. But when we got to this adverse childhood experiences, we gelled. Everything came together around that. So we also, our little Louisville group realized that we couldn't do this alone. And that if we tried to make this a Louisville effort, Julie and Frank, that would go over like a lead balloon. And so we decided we got to get some grant makers from all over the state. So I went from being a convener of the group to the recruiter for the larger state. And I'm pleased to announce to you today that we have 32 grant-making organizations from Paducah to Hazard and as far south as Bowling Green that are engaged, invested with human and financial capital in Bloom, Kentucky. I want to note, this Rotary Club of Louisville has played a big part in this because 7 of the foundations that are engaged in this are led by Rotarians. So just real quickly, Ashley Bauer and Susan Spada from the Foundation for Healthy Kentucky, Paula Harshaw from the Harshaw Family Foundation, Sharon LaRue, Kentucky Foundation for Women, Meredith Erickson from the Norton Family Foundation, Carl Thomas, B.B. Cook Foundation, and at the time, Walter Woods of the Humana Foundation. And then the Eames Foundation, Mike Mountjoy, Lori Flannery, Kathy Knotts, and myself. And we actually have a guest today whose foundation is a part of this, Candy Medina. We don't get her over here at this table.
There you go.
So she would be the 8th one in this. Now, in the interest of time, I'm just going to introduce Terry Brooks. Most of you know Terry, Dr. Terry Brooks, Executive Director of the Kentucky Youth Advocacy. Let me just introduce him this way. This is the way I think of Terry. First of all, he's a man of integrity and a man educated, experienced, and determined as an administrator, an educator, a researcher, an author, and a grandfather. And he is a man that is data-driven, heart-led, and has a passion for children and families that is unparalleled. So help me warmly welcome Dr. Terry Brooks. And he will introduce his team.
I feel really good. The last thing I was told before I left home was, don't eat because you'll get something on your shirt. Try to take care of that quickly. So thanks so much, Barry, and it's great to be here. My friend George Breakmeyer, when he saw me, he was like, "You're kind of like cicadas. You show up every X number of years." So made me feel very good and warm. And I appreciate that. So my goal today is to inspire you to take the domino that is on your table, and I'm going to convince you that that domino represents a challenge and an opportunity for the Commonwealth when it comes to kids. I want to reaffirm what Barry said is we are so indebted to the foundation leaders that he referenced. I would be negligent if I did not especially say that Barry and Ben are Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid when it comes to Bloom. I don't know who's Butch and who's Sundance, but they're the folks that are really the catalyst for what we're doing. In 1983, Lauren Whitehead published an article entitled "The Exponential Power of Dominoes" in the American Journal of Physics. Now, I'm just guessing that if Google search had been around in 1983, an article titled "The Exponential Power of Dominoes" may not have been one of the top searches, okay? But interestingly, with advances in technology, simulations have shown that Whitehead's hypothesis was true, and that body of knowledge has taken off in all kinds of areas. And here was his hypothesis, that a domino can knock down another domino that is 1.5 times its size. So you get it, a 2-inch domino can knock down a 3-inch, a 3-inch can knock down a 4.5-inch. And you're like, who cares? Well, by the 18th domino, you could knock down the Leaning Tower of Pisa. And you're saying, well, who cares? It's already leaning. By the 23rd domino, you can knock down the Eiffel Tower. By the 28th domino, you could knock down the Empire State Building. There's two ways to think about progression: linear and exponential. Linear is 2 plus 2 is 4. Exponential is 4 times 4 is 16. If you took 30 linear steps, you would have traveled 90 feet. Take 30 exponential steps, you would have circled the globe 23 times. Interestingly, as this body of knowledge has taken off, it's gotten traction in all kinds of places. Malcolm Gladwell has written an entire innovation treatise based on Whitehead's work. My man, New England Patriot coach Bill Belichick, designs his kickoff formation around exponential power. A person who influences me in my faith life, Dr. Mark Batterson, a great thinker and author, has written an entire faith-based book around the concept of exponential power. So it's taken off in areas from business to faith to sports. And I believe that the foundations represented today, as well as so many other folks here who I know have a heart for kids, I want to suggest something to you. And we're going to talk about two facets today that carry exponential power for kids.
Hello.
One of those, as Barry alluded to.
Hi there.
Childhood. Now that adversity may come from.
Yep, my husband will be there. So how far out are you?
Environments. And in a lot of ways, when you hear about
I'll let
adverse
him know.
childhood experiences, you're going to say that research has confirmed common sense. And I get that, because we're talking about issues of poverty, housing, food, violence, abuse, and that list goes on. I do want to mention to you that there will be plenty of materials after the meeting. Julie Schmidt knows I am an old broken down educator, so I knew that if I gave it to you during lunch, you'd read it and not listen. So you're not going to get it until after. But when you think about Kentucky, adverse childhood experiences and environments are not an abstract concept. I mean, if you think about, for instance, children who witnessed violence firsthand, we rank 7th in the nation in the percentage of kids who have seen violence. Or you think about parental incarceration, which is clearly an adverse experience for a kid. 3rd in the nation, over 100,000 children currently have moms or dads locked up. If you read the Courier at all, or pay attention to the nightly news, you already know the next two stats that I'm going to give you. No state in the nation has a higher rate of neglect, and no state in the nation has a higher rate of abuse when it comes to kids than does the Commonwealth. In fact, what we know is that each of those adverse experiences have an exponential power. That it's bad if a little boy or a little girl experiences just one of those. It's exponentially worse if it's 2 or 4 or 8. And the pattern in Kentucky is clear. More than 1 in 5 kids in Kentucky have experienced multiple adverse experiences in environments. In fact, that puts us in the top 12 in the nation. And the more adverse experiences you cluster together, sadly, we look worse and worse. So adverse childhood experiences are not some rarity, but instead they are reality to far too many kids. Barry and I were on a call just this morning with leadership from GLI, and they immediately got that when we're talking about adverse experiences and environments, as bad as that is for that 7-year-old today, it has a lifelong effect that will impact them as adults, that will impact their local economy in another 20 years. Because what we know is that adverse experiences as a child, there are direct links to addiction as an adult, to being a perpetrator of intimate partner violence as an adult, to chronic physical health and mental health issues as an adult. Suicide rates among adults are directly linked to their adverse experiences in environments as a child. So you understand when we talk about that domino effect when it comes to adverse experiences, adverse environments, what it means to be growing up, and how it manifests itself when they're adults. Well, the one thing you are not ever going to hear from KYA is a throw our hands up. Because if those are exponential problems, I would suggest we have exponential opportunities. And as Barry alluded to, what we are so grateful for is that that the foundations have come together and gone upstream. I want to emphasize something to you, and that is that when we think about helping kids, there is certainly a dimension of on-the-ground supports that are absolutely vital. Maggie Elder can tell you about what the Girl Scouts do. I can flat out tell you that Cabbage Patch delivers vital services on a daily basis. So that is not to minimize those direct service operations, but ultimately for us to change the trajectory, we have to go upstream and look at public policy. And here's the good news, because we all read a lot of headlines that would suggest that the toxicity and the bifurcation in Frankfurt means nothing's going to happen. But when it comes to adversity in childhood, that is neither a rural nor an urban issue. It is neither a Democratic or a Republican issue. It's not a liberal or a conservative issue. And what I would tell you today is that we carry high hopes as we enter the 2022 session. If there is an arena that House and Senate majority and minority leadership agree on, and they're in agreement with the Bashir administration, it is this arena. So we are looking toward 2022 with optimism when it comes to the exponential power. And what are we talking about? Again, time limit, as Barry has emphasized, I think you said 2 o'clock. That's right. Is that I'm not going to give you the full agenda. The papers out there will, but there are great opportunities. Something I just mentioned, parental incarceration. The percentage, especially of moms, and especially of moms of color, who are locked up for low threshold offenses, is stunning. That takes them out of the workforce. It separates them from kids. And folks who are regarded as tough on crime, and folks who are regarded as criminal justice advocates to loosen things, are in agreement that we can take steps as a state to change the trajectory. Again, we're not talking about threatening public safety, but around parental incarceration. Or let's talk about an issue that all of you just are so excited about, taxes or tax credits. Amazingly, there are a number of ideas on the table that, again, Democrats and Republicans both agree with. I'll give you a good example. The child tax credit that has come from Washington is sort of a post-COVID situation, is going to do stunning things. It basically recognizes that it costs money to raise kids. Big surprise. It affects 93% of kids in Kentucky. That act alone will eliminate almost half of childhood poverty in Kentucky. And that is a common ground idea. Republican leadership, Democratic leadership, the president were together on that in DC. Imagine if we were to emulate that with a state version, because here's the headline. When families get that kind of support, they generally are not putting it in their offshore accounts. They're spending it in the local economy. That's a win-win-win. It wins for families, it wins for local economies, and ironically, it wins for the state budget. We can go on and on and on. The Harshaw family, there's no one who's a stronger champion for children who have to be taken from homes. Think about the adversity that means, that I can no longer be with my mom and dad. Well, we know that in Kentucky, an option is kinship care. Over 100,000 kids in Kentucky live in that environment. In terms of an exponential investment, if we were to fully invest resources when it comes to kinship care, that has an exponential power for kids. Now, I could go on, but I really would rather engage y'all. But what I want you to leave with is that domino premise, that the power of these adverse experiences and environments are exponential. But we stand ready to take advantage of exponential opportunities. And we're counting on you, and kids are counting on you to ingest this information. And all of you have a state senator, and all of you have a state representative. And I would invite, ask, and challenge you to reach out. Imagine the impact if everybody got in their cars as you're going back to work or home. You're calling that state senator saying, hey, I just left this meeting. What are you doing to make sure that the blue agenda for kids becomes a reality for Kentucky in 2022? Thank you, President Gene.
Terry, I know you have some questions, so make your way to the mic, so we'll do a little chat. Oh, do you want to introduce your team?
Sure.
I have many weaknesses. Identifying talent is not one of them. So we have a great team, KYA. Just want to recognize we have Paula, Patricia Timmons, Kelsey Dymar, and Sheena Newton who are here today. So the commitment is defined that this is Patricia's birthday. So that's what she chose to do, was to join for her birthday.
Thank you. Happy birthday. So thank you very much, Terry. Thank you for you. And so let's go back and it's going to talk about adverse childhood experiences. It's important to know that this research was actually done in adults first, correct? And what happened was they kind of backtracked. They looked at these adults and had issues. They had some questions and they found out that those adults had adverse childhood experiences. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, well, what Gene mentioned, it started sort of reverse mapping. Folks started looking at whether it's in the workplace, were there commonalities in perpetrators of intimate partner violence. What could we learn about, and it's hard for me to wrap my head around anybody doing this, but what could we learn about people who were found guilty of child abuse? And you just fill in the blanks and you start going backward. And what you find is it didn't happen by lottery. It didn't happen by random. But adversity in childhood almost inevitably means that you are promulgating adversity as an adult. And so that's where all of the work has begun about going upstream. Let's eliminate that next generation of those issues. And the way to do that is to begin today with those 5 and 8 and 12-year-olds.
What it also, research also showed that there were, that's okay, that there were health consequences that were most important for adults who have, and there's a number, there's a range, it's numerical, numbers of childhood adverse experiences like
chronic heart. You'll see this on the information. You get literally chronic heart disease, other kind of chronic health issues physically, not to mention the mental health aspects they're not indirectly, they're directly tied to that ACEs quotient that you have as a kid.
Thank you, President Gene, and good afternoon, Rotarians. I'm Kevin Field, CEO at Louisville Central Community Center. I also chair the club's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. So I want to thank Barry for the introduction, and certainly Dr. Brooks for your presentation. You hit home on many fronts from my standpoint. But I had kind of a twofold question. Very interested in your exponential investment idea, because I believe in it wholeheartedly. And we're in a season where there are strategic windfalls coming through. And my question is always, how do we best invest those kind of once in a generation investments such that we get exponential impact versus linear impact? You know, the linear idea is when we try to spread it out and share as much as we can with everybody. And so it's also an idea of funding what we've already been doing for a long time that got us exactly where we are today, but we figure out a way to continue it and strengthen it. And is that the best idea? Could we think more strategically and how to invest in ways to get exponential impact? So I wanted to get your thoughts around that from a public policy standpoint, because we're in a kind of a once in a generation season right now. The second part to the question is from a racial equity perspective, you know, all the concerns you raise around adverse childhood experiences are compounded when you think about, you know, Black America and other racial minorities. So how do we, again, get more impact and strategically focus on where the greatest need is?
Thanks. Two responses to that. To the first question, Kevin, my colleagues know I love the phrase strategic imperative. I think that knowing that we as a local community and we as a state have unprecedented resources, we've got to make sure we tackle meta-narrative issues. So I'm going to give you an example because, Kevin, you're a leading voice in this community around childcare. For 20 years, we have nibbled at the edges of childcare. You know, I'm sorry, but we've talked about brains and curriculum, and we've talked about this and that. We're in the same place, and it's because we have not fundamentally addressed workforce issues. So we have unprecedented opportunities to really change the landscape around what it means to work in the childcare industry. I think the business community understands the concept of venture or seed capital. We need to think about these Washington, D.C. dollars as venture capital, not sustaining dollars. So you tackle that. You can't read the Courier again without knowing there's a crisis on DCBS frontline workers. You hear about people leaving, not enough investigations. Again, same issue. It's not about commitment. It's not about process. It's about workforce. Barry and I talked to GLI just today about could we leverage the business community helping us think about creating career ladders, differentiated pay, et cetera. So my hope is that we resist the temptation to give everybody a little that makes some hard choices. I know some of you in the room are connected with the Louisville mayor's race. I hope we can engage mayoral candidates. And do you have the guts to make strategic decisions rather than convenient decisions? So that's number one. Number two, on diversity, some of us, including me, are going to be appearing in front of the Joint General Assembly next Tuesday at 3 o'clock. And we're going to unveil a policy agenda around disparities. We just came out with Kids Count, which is sort of the hopefully the gold standard for data in Kentucky when it comes to kids. And I would say that my takeaway from this year's book is the question, does Kentucky have the integrity and the courage to be honest about disparities? So I'll just give you one quick example, childhood poverty. The good news is the overall trend line for childhood poverty is positive, and we need to pause and celebrate that. So whenever we have less poverty in Kentucky for kids, we need to celebrate. But let me just give you the rude fact. For white kids, 19% of white kids live in poverty. That's 19% too many. But if you're a Black kid in Lexington, in Louisville, 40% of them live in poverty. In Northern Kentucky, Latinx and African-American kids live at 5 times the poverty rate that white kids do in Kenton, Campbell, and Boone County. Those are indisputable, Kevin. So the idea that it is not a question about are there racial disparities, and interestingly, Ben, you'll know how this plays out in Frankfurt. The economic mirror is identical for the poorest Appalachian counties. So we as a state have a bimodal poverty problem. If you're poor, white, and live in Southeast Kentucky, or if you're Black and live in Louisville and Lexington, numbers are identical. So there are disparities by zip code, there are disparities by the color of your skin, and we as a state have to have the guts to face those.
Thank you.
Do you want to add anything to that?
Well, I just. Yeah, real quick, okay. I would just want to say, we're here today, not only to raise your awareness about this, but also to engage you and encourage you to join the advocacy. As Jerry mentioned, a lot of this effort on behalf of the grant makers actually is in human capital, not just financial capital. We're planning, our trustees, our staffs, our friends, our relatives, our circles of influence, to try to engage everybody in this to really, come together as a Commonwealth and get this done.
Yeah.
President Gene, Dr. Brooks. This wasn't covered by your presentation, which is really excellent. But my wife, who is a licensed clinical social worker, asked me this morning to tell her what was said, if anything, about, if you will, the public social worker crisis. Courier Journal has been running articles on this for a week or better. And when it comes to rendering services to the people that you're talking about, it's going to be a social worker by and large. I wonder if you have any comments on that.
Yeah, again, that's a great question. I think the issue, and that's been going on, just talking to President West, who was in a position with Cabinet for Health and Family Services not that long ago, very different administration, identical problems. We have to be able to change the career trajectory, the career opportunities. Again, I was sharing with Gene that I was on an interview recently, and my colleagues know I'm a big college football fan. And so currently, you've got a lot of blind resumes on ESPN. Here's a team, who should go to the playoffs, okay? So with a business group just recently, I did blind resumes. One job was show up when they tell you and cook or serve chicken. The other resume was go to work, don't know what you're gonna walk into. Your job is to save kids' lives. And by the way, you may look down the barrel of a gun. One of those pays $13 an hour. One of them pays $19 an hour. Unfortunately, it's the chicken job that pays $19 an hour. So until we change what it means to be a public social worker, we're not going to change the crisis. We can do programs. The other thing I would mention that I think Kentucky has a great opportunity to do is historically Kentucky has not been the greatest state at drawing down federal matches. I'm going to give you an example. We hear a lot, and it is a priority, and it is definitely an exponential solution on adversity around equipping schools with mental and behavioral health services. Dr. Polio is one of the leading voices, I would say not in the state, but in the nation on this. Right now, Kentucky has the opportunity to draw a 3-to-1 match for those services. And yet, got to tell you, I don't hear local municipal leadership nor enough state leadership to talk about that. What that means is that JCPS spends $1, it gets $4. My math says that's good investments. So if we want to deepen the pockets of social workers, of school-based therapists, of school nurses, those opportunities are there. We just got to be smart enough and strategic enough to take advantage of it. It goes back to what I mentioned to Kevin. You can't nibble at the edges of the frontline DCBS social work crisis. We've got to fundamentally restructure what it means to be a frontline worker in Kentucky.
My wife would agree with you.
Last question.
Terry, we talk constantly about government that for 50 years has gone from 20% of the African-American kids out of 40. I wouldn't say that's been working. So what I'm trying to ask you is, we talk government. It just does not make the solution better. I'd like to know what we can do as individuals to promote, for example, Shawnee High School. Boy, it'd be great to, give a neighborhood feel to Shawnee again, like when my father grew up. But it was a vibrant, great neighborhood, as opposed to waiting year after year after year for the prayer and hope of getting more money, which, by the way, is going to less and less people and going to more and more government infrastructure, people, and cost. How do we, let's get away from the government solving all our problems. What do we do as individuals in this club today to make a difference now?
I think a couple things that I would mention. One is, you're really talking about, are there areas that we could learn from the private sector? So here's one, and it's used as close as Cincinnati, and that is creating micro enterprise zones in under-resourced areas. Do you think there's anybody who lives in a low-income neighborhood who doesn't have imagination and initiative if they had the capital to start that business? Again, that's the same for Eastern Kentucky as it is for downtown Louisville. So there's one. I'll give you another one that doesn't expand local business or local government, but local government could do something about it if they had the courage. How about curbing predatory lending? Am I the only one who sees payday lenders like cockroaches gathering in poor areas, inventing a cycle of debt? That's not adding 50-11 bureaucrats. That's just moving ahead on economics. The school front, I am really encouraged. And again, I am a major Dr. Polio fan. It's been a long time since I've been a fan of the Jefferson County Superintendent. I'm a fan of Marty Polio. One of the things Marty has brought back is the idea that we want every student at Shawnee, and we want those Iroquois Raiders, and we want all the other the Western Warriors. I think I've been all the Rotary clubs, schools. We want all of those young people to be prepared for post-secondary careers and readiness, but that may not be that everybody needs a 4-year liberal arts degree. I mean, I don't know about you, and my wife would be the first one to tell you that if I change a light bulb, she thinks I have gone to adult education class. So my checkbook has lots of HVAC bills, Ms. Hartshaw, electrical bills, car bills, etc. I have not recently written a check to an English or philosophy major. And we need to get back to the place where if a young person wants to go and be a teacher, an attorney, a doctor, that is great. But if they want to be an HVAC technician or an electrician or in the building trades or a hairstylist or a barber, that is equally celebrated. So I do believe that's a great question. And the answer to how do you deal with a Shawnee or a Iroquois is you embrace economic opportunities depending on what those kids, where their gifts are. And I do think that is a trajectory that is changing. And I think that's a trajectory change that we need to celebrate.
All right, thank you all. Thank you so much. Guys, we're out of time. Our announcements will be in Sparks. Go do good work and have fun doing it. This meeting is adjourned.